Right, we'll get into it. So, hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Scooter Space podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dan Lawson, and what we will be discussing is all about this constant desire to make security relevant in boardrooms. But we're going one step beyond that. Like you say, I personally believe now that security's in the boardrooms. It doesn't take much convincing. It still does take some, but cybersecurity is very much here to stay. It's not this alien thing that even 5 years ago it possibly was. But we're going one step beyond that. How can we actually make specific verticals relevant to the organisational sort of resilience and needs? And what I mean by that is we're going to get into sort of Dan's journey as to how he's made CTI and VM programs beyond just information and actually making it actionable intelligence. But before we get into it, Dan, are you okay just to let the audience know a little bit about your journey, mate?
Yeah, of course. I suppose, like many people that join your podcast, I'm ex-military, and when I was coming out of the military, I saw quite a synergy between what I was doing in the main part between that and also some areas of cybersecurity, and I kind of hung my hat upon that and decided that was where I wanted to go as I was leaving. When I did so, I dove straight into threat intelligence. I started doing it for a financial group, and then after the financial group, I moved over during COVID period into luxury items, clothing wear. Yep. Moved on from that, and then the last number of years I've been working in automotive for companies such as McLaren, 47, Jaguar Land Rover, and that's where I am today. Just looking in that cybersecurity space where there's those gaps.
Okay, perfect. So obviously to delve into the topic then, talk to me a little bit about Dan, about obviously working in CTI, working in information and intelligence. I'm constantly having daily chats about, okay, how can you make information intelligence? There's so much noise out there in the industry that, and you kind of look at CVEs as well, and it's all about prioritizing risks to businesses. In your line of work, in your history, how could you firstly go about being like, okay, this is just raw information, it's on the outside of our business, we don't really need to pay attention to it, to, okay, this is intelligence, and then actually taking it one step further, okay, we're going to make this actionable. How do you go through that intelligence life cycle, Dom?
Okay, well, first of all, I suppose from my perspective, it's about understanding the organisation,
okay,
and understanding the people. So the biggest areas for me is business context, which I'll delve into a little bit later on, and then the other side of it is the culture of the organisation as well. Without both of those being dialed in, effectively, and not having threat intelligence, whether that be having a third party provide you with a data lake's worth of feed that you don't know what to do with, or you have some people doing it in-house, you're effectively getting lots of noise if you don't know what to do with it. It doesn't really help anybody.
Yep.
It's a nice to have.
Yep.
And it's, I suppose, a measuring stick of maturity of your organisation that you can afford to throw a lens over that. But whether or not you're getting your bang for buck out of it is to be decided individually by that corporation. So, and
sorry, Dan, just jumping on that one. How can does the responsibility fall with yourself about how much you want to use from that data, or does it fall with the particular intelligence provider that you go with to be like, okay, you give me way too much noise, or you actually give me the right amount of intelligence? Where does the accountability lie there?
Okay, that's a super difficult question. So from a personal perspective, I think if you're going into a provider, you should have an idea of what it is you wish to protect.
Yes.
However, depending on the maturity of both the people that are looking to utilise that provider and also the organisation, depends on how much you're leaning on that provider for steerage of what they can provide and what that would mean to your organisation. So if it's a very immature organisation in that area, then you should be leaning on that vendor to help you with what they can eke out of your data and what that would pump out the other end. If you're a more mature outfit and in fact you're just changing provider, then although they should still help you steer the ship, that context is key, whether it be providing with a list of I suppose, a list of words that are very important,
keywords,
and they can pump into that engine, or it could be knowing what the crown jewels are of your organisation, what a bad day in the office is, and then you can pass that over to the vendor, and they can sort of mould your what you're going to get out of it from what you've been saying. So I think really it's both, but the less mature, the vendor should be helping hold hands.
Yeah. Sorry, so I cut across you then. So obviously, you've got to it's all sort of dependent on how you take it through the intelligence life cycle. Like you say, it depends on the organisations that you actually bring in at that moment in time. So when do you start to categorise sort of noise isn't just noise and this is actually affecting our business needs?
Okay. So again, just my personal perspective, there's lots of different ways to slice the cake, but the way I see it is, again, going back to that context. So before I'm looking to either bring in a new tool or whether I'm looking to tune that tool, I'm going past the analytics stage. I'm going to the decision makers, the business owner, and I'm finding out those end of day situations, what they consider most important. So, for example, if it's OT space or it's manufacturing something, it's probably going to be the ability to continue making that product and get that to be able to sell it. So largely preventing that just-in-time process or that manufacturing process would be a very bad day. And perhaps if it's just a case of email servers are down for half a day in a certain part of the organisation, probably isn't that bad. But it's also, of course, depends on what the organisation is. So for me, it's finding out what that bad day is. Once I understand what the bad day is, then the next step really from vulnerability is understanding your assets, understanding what you have, and then finding out what you don't have.
Yeah. Okay. So it very much is having a look internally at the landscape before even embedding more mature processes. That's absolutely fine. So obviously, organisations that you've been in, they've all got different sort of maturity standards. And I suppose I want to take you firstly back to your time in the military, in the sense of, like, did you pick up anything there that you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to take into the commercial world in how I'm actually working?
Yeah, absolutely. So all my communication-based working in the military, you could almost cookie cutter associate with things like the cyber kill chain, Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. And then a bit further down into my career when I was doing bomb disposal, counterterrorism side of work, I'd argue a lot of threat intelligence and working out where the risks are, where the vulnerabilities are. I saw correlations between that and that side of cybersecurity.
Yeah. Okay. So with that being said then, when you moved from the mill then, and what was your first role when you left the mill?
It was in banking, so I had a very obscure title. It was an architecture title. Although I was touching architecture, it was more risk and mitigation based role.
Okay.
There was architecture involved, but it was kind of jack of all, master of none kind of.
Okay, so you're not even in intelligence at this moment in time. Then it's a little bit wide scope.
It was.
Okay.
But then it did move into intelligence a bit later down the line with the banking group.
All right. Okay. Cool. No problem. So moving into banking then. How did you actually find the structure of working in security? Because in the military, it's very much like it's a pro-security culture in the sense of, like, intelligence is absolutely pivotal to missions. If you're doing threat intelligence in the military, it could be essentially looking at real threat actors in terms of physical people in sort of Eastern Europe, in hostile territories, where it's like, okay, you need to do a threat profiling on this person so that we can go and actually locate them. Obviously in the cyber world, it's all on the digital landscape, but the premise is the same. Moving into banking, like you say, apprehending these threat actors is not the number one business outcome. They've got other financial motives, so therefore security is a bit less down on the culture chain. So how did you find that cultural shift in the sense of, like, I don't get all my own way, I don't get all the budget that I need, I don't get all the team members that I need, I'm going to have to make do with what I've got here? How did you find that transition?
Okay, well, first of all, in the military, you don't get that budget.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, the amount of, I'm sure many of your people watching this ex-military or military will probably tell you that things are held together with tape and all sorts of things. But that being said, there is similarities between I suppose the structure of it.
Yeah.
So in banking you've got PDI, you got ISO 27001 and all the other acronyms that you can throw out to help you with that structure. So I saw the similarities with that, and that was good. But costing wasn't really the concern. It was probably the amount of work to the amount of people doing it.
Yeah.
Now there was, and again, it's not dealing with the threat actor or the bad actor directly necessarily. Most of my time wasn't. There was a time where I was dealing with it with mule herding and trying to find threat actors that were siphoning money through people's accounts. So we were doing that, and that does happen to a point in banking, but the vast majority of it is it's more the I suppose the routers and switches side of it as opposed to the human element. And obviously they will have a reputational impact that they have to really worry about as well, because the last thing a company like a bank wants is people being upset with something happening with their money, or even if it's not happening with theirs and just hear about it in the news, they'll pick up and take the money elsewhere to another banking group. So they're probably more prominent risks to the organisation than the actual threat actor themselves.
Of course. No, it's interesting to hear. And was it the bank when, because we obviously spoke separately to this, Dan, and was it the bank where you did that job interview where you went above and beyond?
It wasn't. That was Deloitte.
Was that Deloitte?
Was
okay.
Deloitte, yeah.
Well, just tell the audience a little bit about that story, because it was a not your usual sort of way of getting a job, shall we say?
No, and it was a long time ago. But basically, due to my role in the military at the time, which was I was leaving, which was with EOD, bomb disposal, I was booked on to go to one of these events to have a bit of a look, an insight to what it would be like to work at that organisation. Unfortunately, at lastminute.com I was unable to go to it because of a job, and I understood that the next time after looking it was going to do another one. There were every 6 months or maybe every year. I can't remember exactly now, but whatever it was definitely after my TX date, and it would have been valuable to me moving forward.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking a little bit outside the box, a bit more pragmatically, I suppose, and I thought, right, well, I'll go down to them anyway. And I couldn't get hold of the person I needed to get hold of, and I wasn't as savvy as perhaps many people are these days about how to get hold of these people, and maybe wielding things like LinkedIn and stuff to get hold of people and start those conversations. So I decided to go down in person and literally try and get an elevator pitch in without having an invite, quite frankly. And the way in which I did that was I understood from many years ago before the military, when I did other jobs, I understood that you'd have what I used to call the gatekeeper, whether that be a receptionist or whatever. So I was thinking, how do I mitigate that? And I thought Dunkin' Donuts was the key. So I bought a tray of donuts and just stated the name of the individual that I wanted to see. Actually completely blasé about the whole thing. I went there in jeans and t-shirt and trainers, and I got past that young lady, given a pass to go up to the floor that gentleman was at. Thinking,
are you now one Dunkin' Donut down, or now? Have you had to bribe your way through, or what?
I haven't, but I never did get that £25 tray of donuts back. They were consumed by somebody. And when we got up to the floor that they were on, there was another receptionist that looked really perplexed that I was there with some donuts. But the long and short of it is I got in front of the individual, and after a bit of a conversation, they asked me to come back in more correct attire, and when invited. But it did certainly highlight the lack of their physical security at the time as well.
Right, yeah. So obviously, am I right in thinking that you sort of did the interview, but then you in prep for that interview, you actually did like a full sort of like threat modelling on them, didn't you?
Not quite a threat model, but I did a soft search on them. It was.
Was this the same story, same organisation? This is the one step beyond.
I also did do one down the road when I went.
This is your style, is it?
It transpires it is, yeah. So I did have a little look at them, but all it was really was a tray of donuts will get you past anybody by the look of it, and I stuck in what was probably a very, very terrible CV at the bottom of them that may or may not get looked at. But I think just from the sheer ballsiness of it all, he was happy to put some time in and see me, which was lucky for me, really, I suppose.
Nice. So there is obviously a reason that I'm sort of asking you about these business to put some more meat on the bones as well. Like you've gone above and beyond in these interviews. You've come with these soft searches about the background of this company. It's just like the risk appetite, am I right in thinking, like how much exposure they've actually got, and this is actually doing it from the outside without actually knowing the internal processes. And you've been able to sort of go above and beyond in terms of like, okay, this is what we would categorize as information out there for anyone to see. So you've not even got the core intelligence yet. And even that was enough to prick the ears of these executives at these organizations that you are interviewing for. And you are being like, oh, wow, okay, this is serious, this. And this is the more often than not, like I've sat in on POVs where we've shown people around sort of their leaked creds, for example, and sometimes it can be like the CEOs and they're like, oh my God, like we need to action this and we need to push this through. And you're kind of doing a very similar example to this. So it's like basically distinguishing between information and intelligence, and you're sort of doing this. So my question to you, Dan, is why is more organizations not doing this? Why have these companies that you're interviewing for not got somebody already going like, okay, all this information is out there, we need to tighten this ship up? Or do they, and they just don't know how to make it actionable intelligence?
Well, largely a lot of what I was doing, I suppose, without realising it, was just open source intelligence.
Okay, yeah.
And that's probably one of the younger, more immature spaces of the intelligence game, I suppose. There's lots of people doing incredible work at that minute. I'll do a big shout out to Aaron Roberts. He does incredible work into OSINT. But effectively, a company can only throw so much of a budget or so many people into an organisation. And many organisations will have a very skeleton crew in their IT teams. Some of them still have this, I suppose, archaic attitude to security or cybersecurity or IT security, that it's very much like the old days where it's switch on and off again, and maybe had a bank of desks, and they haven't really moved with the times. That's got a lot more dangerous as time's gone on. So there's companies like that, and then on the flip side, perhaps you throw a lot of bodies at something, but they just don't have the understanding of what they've got to do. They may have qualifications in a thing, or maybe more. Maybe they have a degree in a subject, but actual hands-on tools, knowing what they're doing, they're worlds apart.
Yes.
So I dare say that a lot of these companies, most companies have a problem. I'm sure every company has a problem. But it's just a case of it'll be pick somewhere on that spectrum of what their problem is. So everywhere does. I remember when I first came out of the military, and I was cherry picking the areas that I wanted to work in. I foolishly believed that each and every time I went to an organisation, I thought in the vast, in the majority of it, they'll be sorted, they'll be very, everything will be polished, it'll be brilliant. And as you find out, and it's no discredit to any company I've worked for, but every company I've dealt with, spoke about, colleagues in different companies, they're all the same. They all just have different problems and different gaps.
So two questions where I want to take this one. And you know what? I will split up in two as well. You mentioned there about OSINT, and like you say, that's readily available data. It's not readily available, but you don't have to go hunting too far for it. How can we actually, as organisations, how can we actually govern that in a sense of like, okay, we know that it's readily available, it's open to everybody, but there's no need to worry about it. It's kind of like looking at CVEs again. It's like, okay, we know that that's a risk to our organisation, but it's like, in terms of how much of a risk it is, it's low. But how can you actually protect about, this is the evolution of it. I'm spreading into disinformation now around sort of like OSINT, blurring the lines with disinformation, and the dangers of it that can happen to an organisation. So I'm going to bring you to the Trump example. When was it? Was it 2-3 months ago? Where he said, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, he said that something in pregnant women gave them sort of a disability of sort. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it was something really trivial, or like sugar or something like that. But he actually said a company name, and I think it was to essentially damage like stocks and that, but because he's so extreme and so outlandish, I might need to proof check this before it goes out. That they were like, that's just not true at all. Like there's no facts behind that. But that company could have took a massive wallop because of someone in such a high prestige is spreading this misinformation into the general consensus. So, how, as you working in security, how do you even protect against something like that?
I don't think you can. I mean, first off, I suppose politics. I'll keep it close to my chest. So
Yeah,
I'll not get political
I won't get in trouble
with President Trump. But I suppose what most organisations would like to do now, or at least they're moving towards, if not already doing it, is having a proactive stance as opposed to a reactive stance. Now, with what you're just talking about, you can't be proactive with it.
Yeah.
Well, you probably can in certain areas, but you are going to have to react to whatever it is that person has said.
Yeah.
So I dare say having a good media team behind you to, prove that isn't the case and discredit what has been said, and then doing something to polish over that problem is probably the best part with it. But going back to OSINT itself, so it's all how you actually wield your vulnerability management. Okay, so a lot of companies, and again, probably more immature companies or companies that just haven't got to that stage yet, they're probably doing the scanning ad hocly at assets they know they've got, which is a more reactive stance. So perhaps they've heard there's a threat actor doing a thing, and it's a CV8, and they have that thing. So they're now going to have a little look. So that's what an awful lot of organisations may do, and then they'll go digging around for it and see if they need to patch that or do something about it. Now, when you get a little bit more mature, then you can start having more regular cadence of your scanning, and you already know what your assets are that you need to be scanning, and hopefully by that point you know your unknown unknowns, and you know what you didn't know about before, which is far more difficult than I'm alluding to. But that's probably the more important part of it. So it's doing regular scanning on things that you know, and then when something does come through the ether, just because it's a CV8, it may not be an 8 to your company, right? So, and that brings it back round to business context again. So it's lots of businesses may deal with all the 10s, and because you've got a plethora of vulnerabilities in any one organisation at all times, because they're always adding up, and playing whack-a-mole with them, you're never really playing full catch-up to it. So because you will never win that game, you need to be very strategic and make sure you're not boiling the ocean, and you're just going for the things that you want to go for that are most important to you. Now, when you understand the business context, you don't just go for the 10 CVs. You go for the ones that matter to you, and perhaps what matters to you is a 4 and a 6, and that if those two happen together, then it's a really bad day for your organisation. But if you go with just the narrative of what the world is saying is a bad day, you'll never ever get down to those 4s and 6s. So you're not really making yourself any safer. So, and I try to draw organisations away from just having a spreadsheet that shows you moved this many vulnerabilities down to this many vulnerabilities, and because it doesn't give you the context of are you any safer from bringing it from there to there, or is it just a numbers game and we're showing we've done something productive? It's not necessarily made the organisation any safer. So it's about dealing with the problems that are most important to you, not dealing with all the problems.
Perfect. And that in itself, what you've just answered there, is a very good sort of synopsis of, if somebody only had sort of 5 minutes to watch this podcast, they'll be able to take that little gem away from this more than anything. So pretty much one of my last questions to you, Dan, because we've already raced through it, is one that is quite new to the podcast, and it is all about picking your security five-a-side team. So it really depends on sort of like, it can be people that you aspire to meet at sometimes. It might be current team members, former team members. But basically, if you're doing a startup and you want to take 5 people into battle with you, who are you bringing along for the ride?
Wow, okay. That is difficult. And I suppose it would really matter depending on what the organisation was.
It does,
if I was just doing a very holistic, trying to look after X or Y, I'd probably pick Carl Hayes as my level 3 analyst or SOC manager. And depending on the size of the organisation, I'd probably also bring in a good friend, Marcin, as well, who's also an absolute wizard on all things in the granular.
What's Marcin's last name?
It eludes me right now. It begins with an M. I will come back to it. Who else would I pick? I suppose as an all-rounder, if my budget allowed to get hold of them, I'd probably say David Jones as well, which there's probably 50,000.
Good luck me tagging him up back end.
But David Jones, he's been around the block a couple of times. He's probably forgotten more than I know. What's that, 3? I'd add myself in there because obviously I want to be employed. And then I suppose I would add... Yeah, I suppose I'd add Aaron Roberts in there from a CTI standpoint, but I'm sure he wouldn't leave his own business for that. But I'd probably bring him in to assist from that side as well. But I think the takeaway really for me with vulnerability management, I suppose, and how CTI is so intrinsically linked to it is, I remember seeing an analogy done on an image before where it was a castle, right? And this castle was basically saying that your organisation is the castle, right? And the cracks in it and the doorways you didn't know existed were the vulnerabilities, and the CTI side of it, or the intelligence side of it, would be perhaps one of the towers, one of the citadels or something, the turrets. Yeah, that would be giving you your threat intelligence, and you'd have drawbridges and all that kind of good stuff, and I suppose the context around it, which I kept banging on about throughout this, would be knowing where these little secret doors are for the king to get out of when he needs to, and also understanding, again with context, the difference between getting these let's call them soldiers, I suppose, of this castle. You need to know which rooms they need to protect, right? There's no point putting a soldier on every room. Perhaps the room that's full of gold or has got the princess in is probably one that needs all the soldiers around it, and not necessarily the bakery or something, right? So it's all about context, and I think the takeaways are really for me is know your assets, and if you don't know them, find out, and that may be a big journey of speaking to lots of different people in lots of different areas of the business, because a lot of knowledge leaves with individuals. Never gets picked up on the movers and levers process, and before you know it, there's assets that aren't patched or updated or even looked after, and many organisations and many people within organisations are quite laissez-faire with risk and just putting risks in place, and the other side of it I'd probably concentrate on would be, again, that context piece. Know what it is that you want to protect. So once you understand your assets and you know what you need to protect, you're no longer boiling that ocean, and you're considering the problems for you. And vulnerability management for me, I would have a threat intelligence led vulnerability management process. So I'd put a big threat intelligence blanket over the whole of vulnerability management and threat exposure management.
No, I really, really like that. And like you say, I hope you're not giving away all your secrets there, Dan, because like you say, it's a terrific way of working. And like I say, I feel like we were only scratching the surface on that answer, like the last two answers that Dan gave there. Two absolute pearls of wisdom. And if anybody's got any questions as to how Dan does that, how Dan approaches his work, I'll be sure to put all this information down below. But once again, Dan, thank you very much for coming on the Screw Space podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.